The Hartwell family carriage rattled loudly over the wet cobblestones of London, the sound sharp against the quiet tension inside. Rain slid down the glass windows in thin racing lines as Elelonina Hartwell sat stiffly on the narrow seat, her gloved hands folded in her lap. At 38, she had long learned how to make herself small, how to take up little space, how to exist without being noticed. Across from her sat her nieces, Sophia and Georgiana, glowing with youth and excitement. Silk dresses in pale blue and soft pink wrapped around them like promises. Their laughter came easily, light and careless, as if the world itself had been made to admire them. "Aunt Elelonina, you're crushing your flowers," Sophia said suddenly, her voice sharp with mock concern. Elelonina looked down. The small posy she carried was wilted, the stems bent beneath her nervous grip. She relaxed her fingers at once. "So I am," she said gently. "How careless of me." Georgiana glanced over and waved her fan with faint boredom. "It hardly matters. No one will be looking at you anyway. You'll be seated with the chaperones all night." Their mother, Margaret Hartwell, barely glanced up from adjusting her daughter's sleeves. "Girls," she said, though her tone carried more amusement than scolding. "That's enough. Your aunt is kind enough to accompany us." Elelonina caught the quick smile that crossed her sister's lips. It was familiar, always the same. The spinster aunt. Useful. Harmless. Invisible. "I hear the Duke of Ashford will be there tonight," Sophia whispered, her eyes shining. "They say he's finally returned to London." Georgiana gasped softly. "Do you think he'll notice me?" Margaret straightened at once. "Mind yourselves. A duke is not easily impressed." Elelonina adjusted the simple gray silk of her gown. "I've heard he's very serious," she offered quietly, "and rather particular." 3 pairs of eyes turned toward her, startled, as if they had forgotten she could speak. "And how would you know that?" Margaret asked lightly. "I heard Lady Harrington mention it at tea," Elelonina said, heat rising in her cheeks. Margaret patted her hand. "Well, dear sister, those concerns are long behind you. How peaceful that must be." The carriage stopped before Elelonina could answer. Inside the Countess of Westfield's townhouse, the ballroom shimmered with candlelight and crystal. Music floated through the air. Laughter followed, and silks brushed against polished floors. Elelonina followed behind her sister and nieces, carrying fans and reticules when asked, smiling politely when introduced, then slowly drifting toward the wall. As always, she sat beside other women of similar age, women who knew the rhythm of waiting and watching. "Miss Hartwell," Mrs. Pembroke said knowingly, "come to observe the spectacle again?" "A lovely evening," Elelonina replied. "For the young," Mrs. Pembroke sniffed. "Ah, there he is." A hush swept through the room. Conversations paused. Heads turned. The Duke of Ashford stood at the entrance, tall and commanding, dark-haired and broad-shouldered. His presence seemed to still the air itself. Elelonina studied him with mild curiosity, expecting nothing. Yet something about his face struck her, a seriousness, a quiet weight behind the courtesy. As the night progressed, her nieces danced and laughed, admirers crowding around them. Elelonina declined invitations, content to observe. During a particularly lively dance, she slipped quietly from the room and entered a small antechamber. The silence was a relief. She stood by the window, gazing out into the dark garden. "Not fond of dancing, Miss Hartwell?" She turned sharply. The Duke stood near the doorway. "My apologies, Your Grace," she curtsied deeply. "I didn't realize anyone was here." "Nor I," he said. "I was seeking quiet." She moved aside at once. "I'll leave." "There's no need," he said calmly. "The window is wide enough for 2. She hesitated, then stayed. Up close, his eyes were a clear winter blue. "You seem surprised that I know your name," he said. "Yes. Quote, Lady Harrington speaks highly of you." Elelonina smiled faintly. "She is generous." They spoke briefly, quietly, about the noise of society, about weariness, about peace. When she returned to the ballroom, no one noticed she had gone. 3 weeks later, at the Blackwood Ball, the whispers returned. The Duke danced with Sophia. Lady Vivian Ashworth watched closely, her smile sharp. Elelanana heard her nieces laughing near a column. "Poor spinster aunt," Sophia said lightly. "At least she knows to stay out of the way." The word struck harder than Elelanina expected. She turned away, only to collide with someone solid. The Duke steadied her. "You are not well," he said. "It's nothing." "Come," he said firmly. "Fresh air." On the terrace, the cool night wrapped around them. "I heard," he said quietly. She said nothing. "You defend them even now," he observed. "They are my family." He studied her with something like wonder. "You are remarkable." She laughed softly. "I have never been called that." "Then others are fools." He stepped closer. "My name is Christopher," he said, "when we are alone." Her heart stuttered. "I have watched you," he continued. "Your dignity, your kindness." He took her hands. "Miss Elenina Hartwell," he said, "I wish to court you with the intention of marriage." The doors opened behind them. Her family froze. Before anyone could speak, the Duke dropped to one knee. "Will you marry me?" The world seemed to stop. "Yes," she whispered. And everything changed. By morning, London had already made up its mind. The engagement was all anyone spoke of. In drawing rooms and tea parlors, at breakfast tables and behind closed fans, the same question passed from mouth to mouth. Why her? Elelanina Hartwell woke to the sound of her sister pacing the floor. Margaret's steps were sharp, restless, filled with nervous energy that had not been there before. "I hardly slept," Margaret said, stopping suddenly. Lady Harrington sent her congratulations, but I could see it in her eyes. Confusion, curiosity, suspicion. Elelanina sat at her dressing table, staring at her reflection as if it belonged to another woman, a duchess. The word felt unreal. "The Duke asked," she said quietly. "I accepted." Margaret turned, hands spread. "But why you, Elelanina? Why not Sophia, or Georgiana? Or Lady Vivian Ashworth, for that matter?" Elelanina did not answer. She did not know how. A knock came at the door. Sophia entered slowly, her confidence gone, her eyes uncertain. "We wanted to congratulate you," she said. "Georgiana and I." Elelanina looked at her niece for a long moment, then nodded. "Thank you." Sophia hesitated. "About what we said at the ball." "I was cruel. I'm sorry." Elelanina studied her face and saw something new there. Shame. "You are forgiven," she said simply. "But remember, words leave marks even when spoken lightly." Sophia swallowed and nodded. That afternoon, a small velvet box arrived from Ashford House. Inside lay a sapphire ring surrounded by diamonds, deep blue and unmistakably ancient. A note rested beneath it. "I will call tomorrow. Christopher." Margaret gasped aloud when she saw it. Ashford sapphires, those have been in his family for generations. Elelanina slipped the ring onto her finger. It felt heavy, permanent. Tea at Ashford House the next day felt like stepping into another life. The halls were grand but quiet, filled with history rather than noise. Christopher walked beside her, attentive but never overwhelming. "You may change anything you like," he said as they entered the rooms once meant for a duchess long gone. "Or nothing at all." "It's beautiful," Elelanina replied honestly. He stopped and turned to her. "You are overwhelmed." "Yes," she admitted. "Yesterday I was a burden. Today I am to be mistress of all this." He took her hands. "You will be extraordinary." She searched his face. "Why me?" "Because you see me," he said. "Not the title, not the power." Later, his solicitor arrived with documents. Elelanina listened in disbelief as her allowance, properties, and protections were outlined. "This is too much," she said. "It is appropriate," Christopher replied firmly. "I want you secure." As the solicitor left, Elelanina noticed a portrait in the gallery. "Your father," she said. Christopher nodded, his jaws tightening. a complicated man. When she asked gently, he told her about his cousin Elizabeth, about the forced engagement, about her death. Elelena felt her heart ache. Is that why sincerity matters so much to you? Yes, he said. I swore I would never repeat his mistakes. For the first time, the pieces aligned. In the weeks that followed, London changed its tone. Invitations arrived that once never had. Smiles appeared where there had been none. But beneath it all, something darker stirred. Lady Vivian Ashworth did not disappear. Instead, small slights began. Whispers. Anonymous letters hinting at impropriety. At one gathering, Elelena overheard Lady Vivian suggesting that the Duke's finances were in ruin. At a garden party, the lie was spoken aloud. The Ashford estates are deeply mortgaged, Lady Vivian said smoothly. He needed a bride who would not question such things. The crowd murmured. Elelena stepped forward, her voice steady. That is untrue. Lady Vivian smiled thinly. How would you know? Before Elelena could answer, Christopher appeared. Because it is a lie, he said coldly. And a clumsy one. He exposed the forgery publicly. Lady Vivian left in humiliation, but Elelena felt no relief. That night, another package arrived. A bracelet from Christopher, and beneath it, an unmarked envelope. The Duke is not what he seems. Ask him about Elizabeth Barrett. Elelena's hands trembled as she read the name again. Elizabeth Barrett. She did not sleep. The next afternoon she told Christopher about the note. She saw recognition in his eyes before he masked it. She was my cousin, he said carefully. Her death was a tragedy. But why warn me? Elelena asked. It has nothing to do with us, he replied. Yet doubt had already taken root. That evening, Lady Harrington arrived unannounced. I sent the note, she said gently. You deserve the whole truth. She told Elelena about Elizabeth's pregnancy, about the forced marriage, about the vow Christopher made at her grave. Elelena listened in silence, her heart sinking. So he chose me, she whispered, not only for who I am, but for what I represent. Not entirely, Lady Harrington said, but partly. When Christopher came that night, Elelena faced him. You did not tell me everything. He tried to explain. Pride rose. Words sharpened. I chose you because you would make an excellent duchess, he said at last. Because you see me clearly. And not because you love me, she said softly. Silence fell. Perhaps we are ill-suited, he said coldly. The words broke something fragile between them. I release you, he said finally. The engagement is ended. And he left. Elelena sat alone as the door closed. The wedding was off. London would rejoice at the return of order. But in the quiet of her grief, Elelena realized something that terrified her. She loved him, and she had let him go. Outside, rain began to fall. And far away, Christopher Ashford rode through the dark, already regretting the words that could not be taken back. Morning came quietly, but it brought no peace. Elelena sat by the window as pale light crept across the street below. The world looked unchanged, yet everything inside her had shifted. The wedding was meant to be tomorrow. Flowers ordered, guests invited, a future planned. Now there was only silence. Margaret arrived before breakfast, her face tight with worry. The Duke's secretary came at dawn, she said. They say His Grace has urgent business outside London. Elelena nodded slowly. The engagement is over. Margaret stared at her. Over? How can it be over? Elelena, do you realize what you've done? Quote. Elelena met her sister's eyes calmly. I chose honesty. Quote. Margaret sank into a chair. Men like him do not come twice in a lifetime. Nor should a woman give herself to a life built on half-truths, Elena replied. Margaret left in frustration, shaking her head. Soon after, Sophia burst into the room, breathless. Aunt Elelena, Lady Vivian has been ruined, she said eagerly. Her forgeries were exposed. Her father has sent her away from London in disgrace. Elena felt no triumph, only exhaustion. "And the Duke?" she asked quietly. Sophia hesitated. "He went to Lady Harrington this morning. He looked devastated." The words lingered long after Sophia left. Elena paced the room, her heart torn between pride and longing. She had demanded truth, and when it came, she had flinched from its complexity. Had she expected a man without shadows, without history? A knock sounded. The maid entered, eyes wide. "Miss Hartwell, the Duke of Ashford is here." Elena's breath caught. Moments later, Christopher stood before her. Gone was the polished reserve. In its place stood a man stripped of armor. "I was wrong," he said before she could speak. "I let pride answer where honesty should have." She said nothing. "I loved you before I knew it," he continued. "Not because of vows or symbols or promises to the past. I loved you because you are you, because you challenged me, because you saw me clearly and demanded I do the same." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Why didn't you say that before?" "Because I was afraid," he admitted, "afraid that love made me weak." He stepped closer, careful, respectful. "If you still wish to send me away, I will go." Quietly. "But if there is any part of you that believes what we had was real, then stay with me. Marry me. Not as a symbol. Not as a lesson. As my equal." Elena searched his face. There was no pride now, only truth. "I love you," she said softly, "and I was wrong too. I wanted perfection when what I needed was honesty." He took her hands, trembling. "Then let us try again," he said, "together." She nodded. Yes. The wedding took place the next morning, not with grandeur, but with sincerity. As Elena walked down the aisle, she did not feel like a miracle or a spectacle. She felt like a woman choosing her life with open eyes. Christopher's gaze never left her. When they spoke their vows, they did so plainly. No illusions, no promises of perfection, only commitment. London whispered, as it always did. But within the walls of Ashford House, something stronger was built. Months later, Elena stood in the morning room, sunlight warming her face. Christopher came to stand beside her, his hand resting gently over hers. She smiled. Not because she was a duchess, but because she was finally seen. And finally, she had chosen herself,